Good morning, Trojans, and welcome back to the Morning Brew. I'm your host, Taylor Contarino.
And I'm your host, Nadine Lampy. Today on the Morning Brew, we have a very special episode for you. We have invited the cast and crew of the USC original film Voodoo Macbeth to come onto the show and tell us all about their film, which is set to hit theaters on October 21st.
So Voodoo Macbeth began in a writer's room where screenwriters collaborated on each facet of the writing process. Then the film's 10 directors, who each embodied different perspectives, styles, and tastes, came together to form a common vision. With a seasoned cast and crew, Voodoo Macbeth is a launching pad for the next generation of filmmakers and demonstrates the power of community over the individual.
Written, produced, and directed by USC School of Cinematic Arts MFA students, Voodoo Macbeth is a USC original film in association with Warner Brothers. Distributed by Lightyear Entertainment, it is a narrative feature film about the Harlem Negro Theatre Unit's revolutionary 1936 production of Macbeth. Voodoo Macbeth is based on a true story of a young Orson Welles and a group of committed artists as they set out to create what became a landmark event in African American theater history.
So let's take a look at an episode of Out of the Archives detailing the history that Voodoo Macbeth is based on. And stay around for an interview with Voodoo Macbeth's executive producer and faculty advisor, John Watson, moderated by one of our own associate producers here at the Morning Brew, Daisy No.
Voodoo Macbeth is a new feature film detailing the Negro Theatre Unit's groundbreaking 1936 production of Macbeth. Based on a true story, the movie follows Orson Welles and a group of young artists as they create a piece of historical art that is still talked about today, almost 100 years later. To have a better understanding of this movie, it's good to look back at the original play and the forces that created it. In 1935, the Federal Theater Project was created with the goal to fund live artistic performances across the U.S. Haley Flanagan, appointed director of the project, quickly sought out theaters to fund. During its 3-year lifespan, the Federal Theater Project presented over 8,000 performances with a total cost of $46 million. Over 30 million Americans went to the Federal Theater Project productions, and they created over $2 million in revenue. Flanagan picked John Houseman to lead the Negro Theatre Unit of New York, who worked closely with Broadway actress Rose McClendon. After working on 2 plays with the unit, Houseman began the development of their most ambitious project, an all-black production of Shakespeare's Macbeth. Houseman knew from the start he wanted the young 20-year-old Orson Welles to direct the play. Virginia Welles, Orson's wife, suggested recreating Macbeth into a 19th century Haiti in a world of voodoo witches. Orson used this new creation of Macbeth to create a stage of immense visual and sound effects, which he believed to be as important as the acting. Welles used large paintings on the back of the stage to create a Caribbean jungle on the set. The costume design was inspired by the recent Haitian colonial period. Bright colors and geometric shapes on costumes gave the play a new atmosphere that hadn't been seen much before. Welles built up this atmosphere with a huge cast of 150 people, only 4 of which were professional actors and only 1 of which had previous experience with Shakespeare. With all these different risks the play had taken in its development, the cast and crew were nervous to see how it would be received. The night of April 14, 1936, over 10,000 people filled the streets outside the Lafayette Theater in Harlem, New York. For the next 10 weeks, the production played sold out for every show. It then moved to Adelphi Theater in Midtown, New York. The New York Times stated, "Macbeth merited the excitement that fairly rocked the Lafayette Theater. If it is witches you want, Harlem knows how to overwhelm you with their fury and phantom splendor." After its New York run, the play toured several theaters on the East Coast and Midwest. Macbeth was one of many productions put on by the Federal Theater Project, but was by far the most well-known. Orson Welles went on to direct more plays, and a few years later moved to Hollywood and went on to make Citizen Kane. On the other hand, Macbeth's African-American cast and crew found only limited success as opportunities for African-American theater professionals were not abundant for many years following. Macbeth showed the world that new ideas and unheard voices can create wonderful, mesmerizing works of art.
Welcome back to the Morning Brew. My name is Daisy No, and I'm a screenwriting major in the School of Cinematic Arts. Today with me in the studio is the executive producer and faculty advisor of the USC original feature film, Voodoo Macbeth, John Watson. Welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Hi, Daisy. Thank you.
Alrighty, so just to start off, talking about how this film came to be. Where did this originate? We know that it's from the School of Cinematic Arts. I'm sure there was a lot of different
Well,
students.
we've been making a series of films now for 7 or 8 years called USC Originals. And we did one that I thought was very successful called The Man Whale, in which we did a play within a play. And I thought it would be fun to try and do something like that again. So looking for a play, I thought, well, Shakespeare.
Right.
And then my next thought was Macbeth, because it's arguably the most cinematic of Shakespeare's plays, with fights and murder and betrayal and all kinds of fun things. And so I started Googling around, and I found this production of Voodoo Macbeth in Harlem in 1936 with Orson Welles, who was 20 years old at the time, directing an all-black cast. And it was very controversial, and there was lots of meat on the bones stuff to deal with. So I went, okay, that's our next one.
Right, you see that and you were like, that was a story.
That's it.
So when you were reading the initial draft as the executive producer, what was it about that story that you thought, this needs to be told, and then audiences
Well, I
need
think
to
it's very
hear this?
timely. There's, I told you my original motivation, but having found it, I thought, this is a very significant moment in black theater history.
Right.
And, at a time when there's a real resurgence now of black filmmakers and black actors, I thought, well, let's celebrate a previous time where something like that happened.
Right, I mean, I personally did not know that this was a story in our history, so I think being able to watch and learn about it was
It's
fairly significant.
very few people knew about it, but hopefully now a lot more people will know about it.
Oh yeah, they will for sure. And it took so many incredible writers on this team to make this happen. When it comes to collaborating on a script for a feature film, was it more of like a writer's room or editing and kind of rewriting?
No, it's very much of a writer's room. I in my previous career, I ran a lot of writer's room for TV shows. And so that's part of what I'm pioneering here in terms of these feature classes. We write them in a writer's room in one semester, and the next semester we go make them with multiple directors. It's a very unique form of filmmaking, but it's
Right.
very much in the form of a writer's room, and the secret is that everyone's equal. Leave your ego at the door is my mantra. So we spend about half of each session reading back what the writers have written the week before, and half of it breaking story and making sure we're all on the same page and discussing the character arcs and all that good stuff. And we all rewrite each other. I say we all. I'm supervising. I'm not actually doing any writing, but everyone gets rewritten. So you can't, at the end of the day, identify who wrote which lines or which scenes. It's just all for one and one for all.
Right, and I feel like with a film, you can see success when you watch it and you can't tell who contributed what. It just feels
Well,
like
that's
the
the secret,
culmination.
both in the writing process and in the directing process, is to make it seamless, to make it feel like one vision. And it's really a meld of feature making and TV show making, in that there's a consistent voice in television shows for the most part. You shouldn't be able to tell the difference between episode 3 and episode 37 of a TV show. And that's because we have a consistent showrunners, producers,
Right.
we have consistent DP, consistent production designer, so everybody's working to the same vision. And we spend the first half of the semester in pre-production getting everyone on the same page, making sure the directors are all telling the same story and they understand the characters.
Right. Well, thank you so much for sharing about that vision. Let's go see what had to happen in order to make that vision happen. Let's hear, we'll jump to a exclusive interview of the two producers after this, but first, here's a trailer of Voodoo Macbeth.
Orson Welles, meet Rose McClendon. We're mounting a Scottish play.
In Harlem, for Negro Theatre.
We want you to direct.
The play is set in 19th century Haiti with voodoo.
Voodoo?
Voodoo.
If I'm going to direct, it needs to be something that will put me on the map.
It's the Negro Theatre Unit. Your white boy better get that straight.
How's it going?
You stink of booze. So do you.
Barry, just try to look murderous, okay?
Are you drunk?
I was drunk. Tragically, it's past tense.
Y'all crazy. Watch out!
By the pricking of my thumbs, something wicked this way comes.
This is un-American. That monstrosity will never see opening night.
There are protesters outside who want us to fail.
Shut it down! Shut it down!
We're gonna do it again and again until we get it right.
It's not too late to fix this.
I'm not sure I know how.
From time to time, directors need a swift kick in the ass.
I need to stop trying to force you to my will. I need to trust you.
All the perfumes of Arabia are not sweet in this little head.
It's way too subversive for true Americans.
Too subversive or too black.
Have you ever wanted something so badly? You do anything, and I mean anything, to make it happen.
What a fantastic first look at Voodoo Macbeth. Wow. And now joining us in the studio are producers Miles Alva and Jason Phillips. Jason, Miles, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. So tell me, what was it like producing a feature film while still being a student at USC?
Well, I was actually still a student, but most producers that do this project are not students like Jason. And it was intense. It was difficult. It was my last semester, and this consumed most of my time. But I only had about one class at that time, so it was pretty much this and that.
And this ended up being your thesis, didn't it?
This was actually my thesis, yeah. So I was able to convince the school to let this be my thesis, and it worked out well for me, yeah.
Yeah, so I was an alumni, and so was our other producer, Ivy Shao. And it was a great experience for me because right after college, I was able to come back and produce my first feature. And it kind of serves as a launching point for a lot of alumni trying to make their start in independent features. So it's a really great opportunity for all the students and alumni that are part of the project. And it was a huge learning experience. And I'm very grateful for that. I've taken all these lessons to all the other features that I've been working on since Voodoo Macbeth.
So you mentioned that this was your thesis project. What was it about this story that spoke to you that made you want to make it your project and made you want to produce?
Interestingly, it was more of the opportunity to produce a feature while I was still a student and get that under my belt. And it being such a huge project, I felt that I needed to make it my thesis. I couldn't focus on something else. That was pretty much the reason that I did that, because I wanted to dedicate my time to it completely, and I couldn't do both at the same time. So I was able to make this my thesis.
And for me, I just love theater. I actually have loved Macbeth for a long time. In high school, I staged a production of just the scenes from Macbeth with the witches. So right when I heard about this, I was like, oh my God, Macbeth, I've got to get into that. And then when I heard more about the story, I was like, how has this story not been explored and told? And I kind of just fell in love with all of the characters and the story that the writers so beautifully put together. And so for me, it was a nice combination of a great opportunity to produce a feature and then also have a story that I really loved.
Mm-hmm, yeah. And so what would be your advice to USC students who are looking to get into production?
It's a great question. I mean, you just got to get into it. You just got to do it, talk to as many people as you can, meet as many people, and make all of your projects that you want to make. I think the most important thing and something we've learned during this is you're only going to learn as much as you need to from the project if you take it as far as you can. So, finish that edit even if you don't like the cut that you have, and see what kind of lessons you can get from the project you're making, and just get on as many sets as possible at USC. There was a great assignment in one of my classes with Sev Ohanian. I don't know if you did this one, where we had to cold email a random person in the industry.
That's a good one, though.
Yeah, and as a student, you have so much access. You can, talk to the camera operator of the Avengers movies and be like, hey, I just want to ask you some questions. And then maybe that connection will lead to something. Yeah. So it's about trying every door that's out there possible and just knocking and trying to get in as much as possible to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Anything to add to that?
No, I think you said it perfectly.
Yeah. So then, of course, Macbeth is the Scottish play. It is notorious for anything that can go wrong will go wrong. Were there any challenges or difficulties that you guys faced on set or being a producer for this film?
There was quite a few challenges on this movie. I mean, obviously, there's not enough money ever. We were shooting on a huge backlot at Warner Brothers, and we had to shoot overnights in the middle of the night. At that time of year, it was extremely cold. We couldn't keep people warm. We went extremely long hours. We lost some of our shots. And then also, it's just a massive area to cover. So just like moving from one end of the lot to the other end of the lot, moving all your stuff takes so much time that we didn't really have the experience and like account for. And additionally, it's just like having to clean all that up.
Yeah.
Having to clean all that
just
up.
The sheer amount of trash that was created, man.
And it was just more than we expected to take on.
Yeah,
that was a huge challenge.
One fun fact is, there's this whole idea of the curse with Macbeth, saying the word Macbeth in a theater. We actually had one day, we were shooting in the theater down in San Pedro, and randomly out of nowhere, all of the electricity went out in the entire building, and we had to shut down for the entire day, rework the schedule to get those shots in somewhere else. But it was such like a weird, eerie moment where we're like, who said Macbeth in this theater? Like, what is going on? Like, let's hope this doesn't happen again. But thankfully that was our only one weird like ghost scare throughout the whole thing. But that was a fun kind of weird experience that we went through together.
Yeah, it was funny. I was actually asking the producers before we started, I was like, am I allowed to say Macbeth? I mean, we're on a stage technically.
Luckily we're on a sound stage, you know. We're not in a theater. Yeah.
They can't get us in here.
If it does, we'll go outside, spin around 3 times and throw some salt there. I think that's what it is. Or spit over your left shoulder.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for being here today to talk about the movie and for this great look into Voodoo Macbeth. Stay tuned for even more exclusive interviews with the cast and crew of Voodoo Macbeth. We'll be back with one of the directors, Zoe Saldana, after the break.
Public service announcement from the United States government. There may be goblins hiding in your house. If your home security isn't good enough, goblins could get into your house so they can find easy, accessible food. Do you really want goblin ectoplasm all over your beautiful home? What about the new sheets you just got? Better be careful. Studies have shown that if you have a goblin infestation in your house, you should round all of them up, put them in a pot, and bake them in the oven at 400 degrees.
You love Uber Eats, the #1 app for getting your favorite local and chain foods delivered right to your door. Uber Eats is proud to present Uber Feeds. We want to go all the way for our customers, which is why we will have Uber Feeds delivery drivers literally feed your meal to you. Safety is our #1 priority, which is why every driver is vaccinated. Better yet, download now and get a delivery and feeding absolutely free. Uber Feeds, stuffed in more ways than one.
Feeling overwhelmed by school? Homework assignments keep piling up? Crippled by existential despair? Caffeine not cutting it? Well, then I have a solution for you. Procrastination.
Wow, so how does it work?
Simply take your work and stop doing it. Play video games. Go on your phone. Endless possibilities.
Boy, howdy, do I feel relaxed. Thanks, procrastination.
Back to the Morning Brew. With us now is one of the many amazing directors from Voodoo Macbeth, Zoe Saldana. Zoe, we are so happy to have you here. Thank you so much, and we're so excited to talk about the movie.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about it too. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So let's just get right into it then. So what was it like working with 9 other directors on this production?
Pretty crazy, as you can probably imagine, but a lot of fun and sort of like a once-in-a-lifetime kind of experience.
Yeah.
I know it's been mentioned before, but it's the power of the group, the power of the community to make a project, and we were all really committed to the story, and I think we all wanted to treat it like it was our movie.
Yeah.
So we each had a lot of possession around just making sure that this came out, to the best of our abilities together. But it was a lot of fun, a lot of collaboration, which sometimes you get that from school just sort of naturally.
Right.
But being put like under the pressure to make this feature film together really kind of showed our chops in that way.
And I think, it shows in the movie now. It's such an incredible thing that you all did together. So congratulations on that. I would love to ask, what was the most fun part about the setting taking place in the 1930s?
Yeah, well, I've always kind of been fascinated with the Harlem Renaissance, so for me it was really exciting. I loved every element of it, from every like art department, wardrobe to production design, and all of those things. It was so much fun to dive into building like the character. You know, we can refer to like locations as having character. So building out those spaces, really filling them with life, and so getting to look at like vintage, retro, like knickknacks and clothing, fabrics, and different things like that. Like a couple of times I'm in like the background, just being a background actor, but I got dressed up in like the hats and the coats and stuff, and it's really cool and really fun.
That sounds fun. So you got to kind of switch hats. What was that like?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm an actor, but it's fun to like be inside of the world, you know, and be on the other side of the camera because I'm so often behind it. It gave me a lot of respect for actors and what they do and how they can perform. Like, you know, as soon as you say action, they get into character and become that person, and that's always really amazing.
That is amazing. And this is such an important story to tell. So in your opinion, why do you think it's so important?
It's a really important story to tell because it's untold. It's sort of like a hidden part of theatrical history, a hidden part of Black theatrical history. It's really important, I think, to even look at who Orson Welles was when he was younger. He's a director that we all sort of like know and love, and we know his most famous movies, but maybe not the stuff that he did in his early career. And I think this was pivotal for him. I think it was an opportunity where his cast really loved him as well. And I think that that's a story we often don't hear about Orson, like hearing about him being loved by the folks that he worked with instead of, you know, being looked at as sort of mean. But, you know, other elements of like it being Black theater and really elevating Black art, especially at this time coming out of the Great Depression, all of the Renaissance that was happening at that time. It's just an important story to tell.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's been so nice getting to hear about your role as the director, and I think it's amazing that you were able to kind of be a little bit part of everything, also being part of the production and being a background actor, and your contribution is honestly incredible, and we're just so lucky that we're able to see this in real time. So thank you so much for coming. We would love to take a look at part of the movie that you directed. So after this short clip, we will be back here to chat with Inger Tudor and Jewell Wilson Bridges on their outstanding performances in the film. So thank you.
Thank you.
Act 3, Scene 4. Banquet prepared. Enter the king, Lady M.
Mr. Wells.
Yes, Lady Rose.
Wano isn't here.
Wonderful. Just wonderful. Okay. Well, we wait for nobody. Act 4, Scene 2. Lady Macbeth. Where's Edna? Edna. You're up. The king has hired murderers to kill Macduff and his family. Damn it! We haven't hired any murderers yet. Never mind. I'll do it. Okay. Let's go, people, let's go.
Welcome back, everyone. That was amazing. From the acting to the visuals, Zoe just did an incredible job directing and making her vision come to life. My name is Camille Klausner, and I'm an associate producer here on The Morning Brew. Today, we've had the pleasure of hearing from those working behind the screen on USC Cinema's Voodoo Macbeth. But what about those in front of the screen? Now in the studio with me are lead actors Inger Tudor and Jewell Wilson Bridges. Inger, Jewell, thank you so much for being here today. We are so happy to have you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us, yeah.
Yeah, so let's just get right into the questions. What did you guys enjoy most about working on Voodoo Macbeth?
I think the thing that I most enjoyed was a combination of the collaboration and also just the idea of being able to take a Shakespeare play and bring it into a film in a way that was different and very interesting and also true to what had happened back in the 1930s when the original production happened.
Right, interesting.
Creating art with other people is what makes it such an incredible journey. This cast and crew were just phenomenal. So I have to say, working with these people made this incredible. But for me, it was my first film. So being able to shoot on the Warner Brothers backlot when I had just arrived to LA was really surreal and was a really cool experience.
Wow, amazing. As your first film, you did such an incredible job, both of you. I absolutely loved watching the film. And I wanted to ask, what was the biggest challenge about each of your roles?
I think for me, the biggest challenge was that I was actually on tour when we auditioned, and I finished the tour maybe 2 to 3 days before we started shooting. So I didn't have as much time to do sort of the background research that I would like, so I was kind of doing it as we were going. But what that allowed me to do was to be able to come from it from the inside out as opposed to the outside in. So I had to really live in the emotional places and that journey for Rose.
Right, interesting.
I would say one of the most challenging things about doing this project was also one of the most incredible things, which was the unique experience of working with 10 directors, which I knew we would never experience probably something like this again in our lifetimes. And everybody knew this was the mountain to climb. We all understood there needed to be a spirit of collaboration. The directors empowered us to communicate from the very beginning. But just from a scheduling standpoint, when you're working with 6 different directors in one day, you have to continue to shift communication gears and, okay, now we're with this director, now we're with this one. And it really worked seamlessly, but it was a very unique, exciting, both challenging conundrum.
Right, and that was actually my next question. Perfect segue. And what did you think about that?
I agree with Jewell. It was a great opportunity for collaboration on all different levels. And I think what it forced all of us to do was have a very clear vision of what the story was that we were trying to tell. Because we really all had to be on the same page. And especially, as you know, with film, you're shooting out of order. So if you don't know where you're trying to go, if you're working with this director who wants to do something slightly different, and it's taking you out of where your character's been 2 days before, we had that freedom to talk about that and to really all work together.
It really was a perfect storm. There was no room for ego. There was no time for it. We had 25 days. All the departments had to communicate. Actors had to communicate. The directors had to communicate. We all had to trust each other. But because they had a framework that supported us to do this, the magic happened, and it all came together, as you can see.
Yeah, as I can see. I mean, the film was absolutely incredible. And what do you think was your favorite scene to perform?
Oh, wow. 2, and I won't talk about them at length. The one with Jewell in the dressing room, I love doing that scene. And then the out damn spot scene, because there's so many things that are going on different layers that you have to be able to make happen in a single shot.
Right. You were so spectacular in that. This is very hard for me because most of my Inger and I immediately had a connection from the beginning. So most of my favorite scenes, the hospital scene was one of my favorite scenes working with you. For another surreal moment, the last scene in the film is shot in this alley on Warner Brothers back lot where the Spider-Man upside down kiss happened. So there was something very cool about shooting in that same location and feeling that connective tissue to all these films that came before. And it was one of my favorite scenes to shoot because the camera followed us and we moved. It was a one shot. And that was really fun to do.
Right. Thank you guys so much. Unfortunately, that is all the time that we have today. Inger, Jewell, thank you so much for being here. You both were absolutely incredible, and I look forward to the film's official release on October 21st. Once again, I'm Camille Klausner. That's it for me. Back to you, Taylor and Nadine.
So this is all from us today, and a huge thank you to all of the cast and crew who joined us here in the studio today. Please, please, please be sure to go support the USC Original Voodoo Macbeth on Friday, October 21st in theaters. And thank you all so much for tuning in today. I'm Taylor.
And I'm Nadine. And don't forget to take a sip of that coffee and enjoy the morning brew. Fight on.